Hello, and welcome to the Holistics video demonstration of how to create filters for your Holistics reports. In this video, I'll be showing you how you can add date filters, drop-down filters, and text filters using the three methods of manual entries, drawing values from database tables, or using SQL queries to add these filters. If you haven't already watched the Holistics video on how to use filters for your Holistics reports, I highly recommend that you do to have a better idea of the filters that we'll be using here. So if you're ready, let's go. The Report Filters tab of the Holistics Report Editor is where we edit and add new filters to the report. Notice the text in lowercase above the labels for the filters. These are the filter variable names that are used within the SQL formula for the report in order to modify the view that we'd like to see. For example, notice that the variable name for this filter is title_list and the label is titles bulk search. To show you how this works, I'm going to select several values for these filters to show you how it will appear within the SQL formula for the report. Select the query editor. Notice that within the SQL formula for the report, there are these double curly braces. Within these braces are the filter variable names that were used to modify the view for the query that will be executed. For example, if you select Execute a Query, you will see that instead of the double curly braces, what appears are the filter values that we selected earlier. I'll now show you how to add these various filters to the report. First, let's talk about date filters. While you can select a specific range of dates that you'd like to see, if you choose Edit for this date range filter, you'll see that the default start value is this month begin and default end value is yesterday. Date filters are able to accept values such as last month begin, yesterday, 2 weeks ago, and other easy to understand date syntaxes, which you can refer to the syntax docs for more details. If you were to look at the query editor, you'll see that these filter values appear as date range start and date range end for the variable names. Let's say that instead of a date range filter, I like to include individual date values. In this case, let's add a new date filter type. The variable name needs to match what's in the SQL formula, so let's have it as date range start, and we can leave the label with the same name. And let's have the default value to be last month begin. Likewise, let's add another date filter and call it date range end and have the default value to be yesterday. Now, if we are to run this filter query, we'll be able to see how this is reflected within the executed query. As you can see, for date range start, it has shown the date value for last month begin, and for date range end, it was the value for yesterday. Next, let's talk about creating drop-down filters. The first method we'll use is manual entries. This will be for the gender filter. Remember that the variable name needs to match what's in the SQL formula for this filter to work. This is where the gender filter variable name appears within the SQL formula in order for the query to work. Double-click here. These are going to be two comma-separated values that will be stored in the drop-down filter. The first value is the key that we use to match your data in the query syntax, and the second is the text that you'll see in the filter drop-down. Next, let's add a separator to organize our filters. And you'll see that if we run the query now, the values that we used for the gender filter are applied. Next, let's talk about adding drop-down filters using the database table method. This method makes sense when there are too many values for you to enter manually, or if there are new filter values that you'd like to add from a specific column. This will be for the variable name, city. This is where the city filter variable name appears inside the SQL formula in order for the query to work. Specify the data source and the database and table that you'll be extracting the values from. The value field extracts the values from the table column that matches the SQL formula requirements, and the text field will be the values that appear for the query. Once we run this, the values that we require are extracted from the database table. The last method I'd like to share with you for creating drop-down filters is by using SQL code. This method gives you great flexibility, allowing you to specify specific filter designs that you would like, such as using conditional SQL statements to build your filters. I'll give you an example by building a parent-child filter. I'll now run this query to pull up the table that I'd like to build the parent-child filters from. As you can see, the two columns we need are ID and parent ID. I'm going to create filters such that when ID equals to parent ID, we know that this belongs to the parent filter, and when ID does not equal to parent ID, that's when we know it will belong to the child filter. So I specify the variable name, which has to match the SQL formula in the query editor for the report, and I'll call this category group for the label. This is where the product group filter variable name appears inside the SQL formula in order for the query to work. We specify the data source, and this feature actually allows us to create filters using different data sources, which is useful if the filter value does not belong to the same data source. Here we mention the condition where ID equals to parent ID. And we allow multiple selections for checkboxes. We inspect the filter and see that it's running correctly, and we save the report. And so if we were to run this filter, we see that it pulls up the correct parent category. Now let's add the child filter. Again, we specify the correct variable name as per the SQL formula for the report editor. This is where the product category filter variable name appears inside the SQL formula in order for the query to work. Specify the data source, and now we have to mention that this is a child filter of the product group, the variable for the parent filter that we just created. We specify the condition where parent ID does not equal to ID. And we allow multiple selections for checkboxes. Now, we're able to see that when we select a parent category, the product category will show only the values that match the parent filter. And that is how you create parent-child filters using SQL code for drop-down filters. Finally, I'll now show you how you can create text filters for your Holistics reports. This is a text input filter for the variable name title. This is where the title filter variable name appears inside the SQL formula in order for the query to work. Based on how the title variable name is used in this report SQL formula, this allows us to find any entries in the title column which matches our text entry. The text filter allows you to search for records that contain just any part of the text without using the exact phrase. As you can see, the records that were retrieved were the ones that matched the text entry of the within the title column. Similarly, for list inputs, Holistics List Filters allows us to accept thousands of records that you would like to search for. This is where the title list filter variable name appears inside the SQL formula in order for the query to work. In this case, once we save the report, all you have to do is to copy and paste a list of values separated by lines, and once you've done this, we can then submit a query to draw out the terms from the titles column that matches the records in this list. And that's how you create filters for your Holistics reports. Thanks for watching, and from the Holistics team, we'll see you soon.